The haunting whistle of the locomotive once signaled this nation's coming of age. Pulled together by vast networks of steel and great ambition, these small Canadian communities would never know isolation again, as long as the faint perfume of steam and burning coal lay just over the horizon. Now, hardly more than a frail reminder of the booming railroad that united us from coast to distant coast, many of these corridors lie vacant. While some cling to the prospect of survival, the threat of extinction for most of them is very real. But listen, passing through these scenic hills and valleys, the traveler is admitted to the sights and sounds of nature. The atmosphere here is so still, one dares not disturb its peace. The nature trail is nonetheless a place to which more Canadians are turning every year for inexpensive recreation. For it is here on these trails, safe from the demands and hazards of modern living, that cyclists, hikers, skiers, horseback riders, and naturalists have so far managed to connect peacefully. While the drive toward fitness leads some to these wide open spaces, others simply look for release from the urban grind and find it here. Environmental awareness is not imposed here. It is embraced, just as naturally as the visitor becomes a willing observer of nature's incredible diversity. And as the railroad slices through great stretches of Canadian landscape, it offers up its abandoned surface to an even greater number of recreational diversions. What remains of this old line can surely be found in many parts of Canada, for these are the survivors. But many more corridors are being lost to commercial development. A lot of them have been stripped of their potential to unite Canadian communities as the Great Railroad once did. Instead, many lines now serve a thriving business interest with little thought given to alternative proposals for the land's use. Still, railroad companies are open to solutions that will help them dispose of huge tracts of abandoned rail beds. With assistance from the Rails to Greenways movement, they're less likely to overlook the prospects for rebirth by restoring corridors for public access as well as utilities. And even landowners who are suspicious of renewed interest in the corridor need reassurance that the space will be protected against vandalism. Quite often, they need to be convinced that their own property values increase as a result of nearby trail preservation. These competing interests are but some of the challenges facing the Rails to Greenways movement in Canada today. Ever conscious of the link between the environment and its human inhabitants, the movement also reminds us of the importance of preserving our planet for future generations.
I think rail trail conversions really represent an opportunity to preserve for posterity and for the long term a really significant chapter in our history and development. Though often railways were constructed to connect areas of economic importance, for example, between manufacturing areas and resource areas and that sort of thing. The presence of railways themselves often led to secondary development along rail lines, and in fact many towns that are very thriving metropolises today wouldn't be in place if not for the presence of a railway. So it gives us the perspective on history and lets us understand a little bit the reasons for the shapes of our human settlements. And by maintaining those linkages, it's literally a journey through history.
It's a part of our heritage to be able to ride a horse or walk the trails. And we have to get away from feeling that the automobile is king. We have to find other ways and enjoy the outside.
Partnerships with Canada's expanding telecommunications industry are giving courage to the Rails to Greenways movement. Grassroots supporters of Canada's trails are no longer willing to lose these precious and few green spaces to exploitation by big business. Instead, the movement is working with commerce and all levels of government to preserve trail sites that will benefit all kinds of uses and accommodate people with disabilities. Every trail site requires strong grassroots support from local business, tourist bureaus, local recreation associations, and government. The benefits of preservation translate into profit for small businesses that cater to the trail user, increased tourism for communities in search of new ways to attract visitors, growing interest in physical fitness, and greater public support for all levels of government, which put the public interest ahead of private investment. A thorough understanding of the trail's historical, ecological, and recreational benefits accounts for the growing popularity of the Rails to Greenways movement in this country. The railroad itself is a monument to Canada's heritage, and it draws out the naturally curious. Romantic notions of a bygone era are especially vivid along the more scenic routes. Children who grow up with a profound respect for the outdoors learn to expect no less than full access to a healthy environment throughout their lives. Canada's greenways are becoming more and more the legacy for future generations. Under the cover of snow, blooming in springtime, thick with summer activity, or veiled in a cool autumn's glow, the trail withholds none of its surprises. And as purpose changes with the season, so must the trail be adapted to meet the demand. And the more successful trails will try to accommodate as many compatible methods of transportation as the path will allow.
Well, this trail, because it is an abandoned rail bed, and is along the side of a road, is accessible to almost everyone, and we find now that there are more bicyclists using the trail because of the increase in the fad, and there are more hikers out walking the trail. We as horsemen in our group have always pushed for multi-use trails. We're not one to want a piece of land for ourselves. We like to see everyone use it and enjoy it, and we always believe that there's a possibility and a reasonable way to accommodate everyone on a trail.
I think it's good for the community for Imbrum, the people. It's good for exercise, and it's a good trail because there's a lot of traffic here, and I think it's safe for the people and children.
The Rails to Greenways movement in Canada has set itself an enormous task. Like the railroad pioneers before them who turned every obstacle into an opportunity and whose dreams expanded far beyond the horizon they set out to explore, today's visionaries must work toward protecting these abandoned corridors against abuse and neglect. Only courage and commitment passed on and strengthened with each generation will determine the survival of this powerful legacy.